Okay, guys, so today we're taking a look at the question of free speech lesson. You've got two different readings that you need to complete in order to be done with today. The first reading is the First Amendment in the Annenberg Classroom First Paragraphs on Free Speech. So you'll see that there's nothing really that says Annenberg here. So I'm going to show you exactly where you need to look, okay, guys? What you need to read is you need to read this Amendment 1 on the left-hand side. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So that is the actual text in the First Amendment. Now we're going to go ahead and go to the right side to the Common Interpretation section, and you're going to click on the Freedom of Speech and of the Press. Freedom of Speech and of the Press. Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. What does this mean today? Generally speaking, it means that the government may not jail, fine, or impose civil liability on people or organizations based on what they say or write, except in exceptional circumstances. Although the First Amendment says Congress, the Supreme Court has held that speakers are protected against all government agencies and officials, federal, state, and local, and legislative, executive, or judicial. The First Amendment does not protect speakers, however, against private individuals or organizations, like private employers, colleges, or private landowners. The First Amendment restrains only the government. The Supreme Court has interpreted speech and press broadly as covering not only talking, writing, and printing, but also broadcasting using the internet and other forms of expression. The freedom of speech also applies to symbolic expression, like displaying flags, wearing armbands, burning crosses, and the like. The Supreme Court has held that restrictions on speech because of its content, that is, when the government targets the speaker's message, generally violate the First Amendment. Laws that prohibit people from criticizing a war, opposing abortion, or advocating high taxes are examples of unconstitutional content-based restrictions. Such laws are thought to be problematic because they distort public debate and contradict the principle of self-government, that the government cannot be trusted to decide what laws or information the people should be allowed to hear. So we took a look at the first 4 paragraphs here. We're going to also, if you examine our lesson and go to step 2, take a look at Tinker versus Des Moines. Background summary. Tinker versus Des Moines. John and Mary Beth Tinker attended public school in Des Moines, Iowa in 1965. Their school did not allow students to wear armbands to protest the Vietnam War. However, the Tinkers decided to wear their armbands to school anyway. School officials asked the Tinkers to remove their armbands, but the Tinkers refused. John and Mary Beth Tinker were suspended from school until they agreed to remove the armbands. The Tinkers sued the school district in the United States District Court. The Tinkers believed that the Des Moines School District violated their right to free speech under the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. Even though the students were not speaking with their voices, they believed that wearing armbands was like speaking. This is called a symbolic speech. The district court sided with the school officials. The court said that wearing the armbands could disrupt the learning at the school. Learning without disruption was more important than the free speech of the students. The Tinkers appealed their case to the next level of courts, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Eighth Circuit. But the Circuit Court agreed with the District Court. The Tinkers then appealed their case to the Supreme Court of the United States. The court had to answer this basic question: does the constitutional right of free speech protect the symbolic speech of a public school student? In 1968, the Supreme Court of the United States agreed to hear the case of Tinker versus Des Moines. They issued their decision in 1969. Summary of the decision. In the 7-2 decision, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the Tinkers. So different than the past rulings, Justice Fortas wrote the majority opinion, ruling that the students retain their constitutional right of the freedom of speech while in public school. Justices Black and Harlan dissented. The court ruled that students are entitled to exercise their constitutional rights, even while in school. The justices reasoned that neither students nor teachers shed their constitutional rights to freedom of speech or expression at the schoolhouse gate. Because student expression is protected by the First Amendment, even while at school, school officials must provide constitutionally valid reasons for regulating student expression. The justification for the regulation must be more than a mere desire to avoid the discomfort and unpleasantness that always accompany an unpopular viewpoint. School officials must show that the expression would cause a material and substantial disruption with the discipline and educational function of the school. The court decided that allowing the Tinkers to wear their armbands protesting the Vietnam conflict would not substantially interfere with the work of the school or impinge upon the rights of other students. Wearing the armbands was like a silent, passive expression of opinion that did not involve any disorder or disturbance, and was unlikely to cause a material and substantial disruption at school. In addition, the justices noted that school officials specifically targeted anti-war armbands, but did not prohibit the wearing of any other symbols conveying a political message, reasoning that the prohibition of expression of one particular opinion is not constitutionally permissible, which means allowable. They concluded that the school officials do not possess absolute authority over their students. In his dissenting opinion, Justice Black acknowledged that while the content of speech generally cannot be regulated or censored, it is a myth to say that any person who has a constitutional right to say what he pleases, where he pleases, and when he pleases. According to Justice Black, the Tinkers' armbands did indeed cause a disturbance by taking students' minds off their classwork and directing them to thoughts about the highly emotional subject of the Vietnam War. This is exactly what school officials were trying to prevent. Justice Black believed that the majority's ruling was too restrictive on school officials, overly limiting their control over their schools, and subjecting public schools to the whims and caprices of their loudest-mouthed students. So that's the reading portion here, guys. You're going to go back to the lesson for today and go ahead and complete the questions at the end on the Tinker and Des Moines case. You can use this text to help, okay? Should you need me, please contact me today.